Question 1. Discuss the theme of slavery in Aphra Behn's Oroonoko. Answer. The theme of slavery is central to Aphra Behn's Oroonoko. The novel portrays the brutal reality of the transatlantic slave trade and its dehumanizing effects on both the enslaved and the enslavers. Oroonoko, an African prince, is betrayed and sold into slavery by British colonists. The novel explores his struggle to maintain his nobility and honor despite his enslavement. Behn critiques the institution of slavery by highlighting Oroonoko's innate nobility and heroic qualities, suggesting that his enslavement is not only unjust but also morally reprehensible. Through the portrayal of Oroonoko's tragic fate, Behn exposes the cruelty and hypocrisy of the slave trade, ultimately questioning the morality of colonial exploitation. Question 2. Analyze the character of Oroonoko in Aphra Behn's novel. How does he embody the traits of a tragic hero? Answer. Oroonoko, the protagonist of Aphra Behn's novel, embodies the traits of a tragic hero through his noble birth, exceptional qualities, and eventual downfall. As a prince and a warrior, Oroonoko possesses a strong sense of honor, courage, and integrity. His love for Amoinda and his desire for freedom drive much of the plot. Despite his virtuous character, Oroonoko's fate is marred by betrayal and enslavement. His tragic flaw, or hamartia, lies in his trust and belief in the honor of others, which leads to his capture and eventual death. Oroonoko's tragic end, where he is executed after a failed rebellion, evokes pity and fear, aligning with the characteristics of a tragic hero as defined by Aristotle. His downfall underscores the themes of injustice and the inhumanity of slavery, making his story a poignant critique of colonial practices. Question 3. How does Aphra Behn use narrative voice and perspective in Oroonoko to enhance the story? Answer. Aphra Behn employs a first-person narrative voice in Oroonoko, which significantly enhances the story by adding authenticity and immediacy. The narrator, who is often identified with Behn herself, provides a personal account of the events, claiming to be an eyewitness to Oroonoko's story. This narrative technique creates a sense of intimacy and reliability, as the narrator expresses sympathy and admiration for Oroonoko, highlighting his noble qualities and the injustices he faces. Additionally, the use of first-person perspective allows Behn to insert her own commentary and critique of slavery and colonialism directly into the narrative. The narrator's detailed descriptions of the setting, characters, and events help to immerse the reader in the world of the novel, making the story more compelling and emotionally impactful. Question 4. Examine the role of Amoinda in Oroonoko. How does her character contribute to the novel's themes? Answer. Amoinda plays a crucial role in Oroonoko, serving as both a love interest and a symbol of loyalty and virtue. Her character contributes significantly to the novel's themes of love, honor, and resistance against oppression. Amoinda's unwavering love for Oroonoko and her commitment to him, even in the face of extreme adversity, underscore the depth of their bond and the strength of their characters. Her beauty and purity make her an object of desire and jealousy, which sets off a chain of events leading to their betrayal and enslavement. Amoinda's tragic fate, culminating in her death at Oroonoko's hands to prevent her further suffering, highlights the devastating impact of slavery and colonial exploitation. Through Amoinda, Behn emphasizes the themes of sacrifice and the human cost of the colonial enterprise, reinforcing her critique of the moral corruption inherent in the slave trade. Question 5. Discuss the significance of the setting in Oroonoko. How does Behn use the New World to develop her themes? Answer. The setting of Oroonoko, in the New World, specifically in Suriname, is significant as it represents the frontier of European colonial expansion and the harsh realities of the slave trade. Behn uses the exotic and untamed landscape of Suriname to contrast with the civilized yet morally corrupt European society. The natural beauty of the setting serves as a backdrop to the brutal and inhumane treatment of the enslaved Africans, highlighting the irony of the so-called civilizing mission of the colonizers. The depiction of Suriname's indigenous people, who live in harmony with nature, further contrasts with the violent and exploitative practices of the Europeans, emphasizing the novel's themes of innocence versus corruption and natural nobility versus artificial hierarchy. By setting the story in the New World, Behn explores the complexities of colonialism, the clash of cultures, and the profound impact of European domination on both the colonized and the colonizers. These questions and answers provide a comprehensive examination of Oroonoko, addressing its major themes, characters, narrative techniques, and setting. Question 1. How does Aphra Behn portray the conflict between honor and betrayal in Oroonoko? Answer. Aphra Behn masterfully portrays the conflict between Honor and betrayal in Oroonoko, through the experiences and character development of her protagonist. Oroonoko, an African prince, epitomizes honor. He is depicted as a man of noble birth and heroic qualities, whose sense of integrity and commitment to truth and loyalty remains steadfast throughout the narrative. His life, however, is marked by a series of betrayals, starting with his capture and enslavement by the British colonists who deceitfully promise him freedom and friendship. The stark contrast between Oroonoko's adherence to a code of honor and the deceitful practices of the colonizers accentuates the moral conflict at the heart of the story. Ben illustrates Oroonoko's internal struggle as he tries to reconcile his noble values with the treacherous world he finds himself in. His final act of rebellion and his refusal to live under the yoke of slavery, even if it means sacrificing his own life and that of his beloved Amoinda, underscores his unwavering commitment to honor. This tragic resolve ultimately highlights the theme of betrayal, not just personal betrayal by individuals but the broader betrayal of humanity through the institution of slavery. Question 2. Analyze the role of European colonialism in Oroonoko, and its impact on the characters and plot. Answer. European colonialism plays a pivotal role in Oroonoko, deeply influencing the characters and driving the plot. Afra Ben provides a critical examination of colonial practices through the depiction of Suriname and the interactions between European colonists and the indigenous and African populations. The impact of colonialism is most profoundly felt by the protagonist, Oroonoko, and his beloved Amoinda. Oroonoko's capture and subsequent sale into slavery are direct results of the colonial enterprise, which seeks to exploit African people for economic gain. The European colonists are portrayed as morally corrupt, their deceitful and brutal behavior standing in stark contrast to Oroonoko's noble character. Ben uses the setting of Suriname, a tropical colony, to explore the harsh realities of colonial rule. The colonists' exploitation of both the land and its people is evident in their treatment of the slaves, who are forced into backbreaking labor and stripped of their dignity. The indigenous people, while depicted with some degree of romanticism, also suffer under the colonial regime, though their plight is not as central to the narrative as that of the African slaves. Through these portrayals, Ben critiques the hypocrisy of European colonialism. The colonists, who often espouse values of civilization and Christianity, are shown to be the true savages in their barbaric treatment of others. The tragic fate of Oroonoko and Amoinda serves as a powerful condemnation of the inhumanity and moral bankruptcy inherent in the colonial project. Question 3. How does Ben's use of first-person narration in Oroonoko affect the reader's perception of the story? Answer. Ben's use of first-person narration in Oroonoko significantly affects the reader's perception by lending a sense of immediacy, intimacy, and authenticity to the story. The narrator, often identified as Ben herself, claims to have been an eyewitness to the events described, which adds a layer of credibility and personal engagement. This narrative choice allows the reader to see the world through the narrator's eyes, fostering a connection with the characters, particularly Oroonoko. The narrator's expressions of admiration for Oroonoko and condemnation of the injustices he faces help to shape the reader's emotional response. The subjective nature of the narration means that the reader is guided to view Oroonoko as a tragic hero and to empathize with his plight. Moreover, the first-person perspective enables Ben to provide detailed descriptions and personal reflections that enhance the depth of the narrative. The narrator's observations and commentaries offer insights into the cultural and moral landscape of the time, making the story not just a tale of personal tragedy but also a broader critique of colonialism and slavery. The intimacy of the first-person narration also allows Ben to explore complex themes and emotions in a nuanced manner. By giving the narrator a voice that is both personal and authoritative, Ben bridges the gap between the reader and the characters, creating a compelling and immersive reading experience. Question 4. In what ways does Oroonoko challenge contemporary views on race and nobility? Answer. Oroonoko challenges contemporary 17th-century views on race and nobility by presenting an African prince who embodies the highest ideals of nobility, honor, and heroism. During a time when Africans were often dehumanized and depicted as inferior by European society, Ben's portrayal of Oroonoko as a noble and admirable character was groundbreaking. Oroonoko's noble birth and princely status immediately set him apart from the stereotypical representations of Africans prevalent in Ben's time. His physical appearance, described with terms often reserved for European aristocrats, and his exceptional qualities, bravery, intelligence, and integrity, further challenge the notion of racial inferiority. By presenting an African man as the epitome of noble virtues, Ben disrupts the racist ideologies that justified the transatlantic slave trade. Furthermore, Ben juxtaposes Oroonoko's inherent nobility with the moral corruption of the European colonizers. The Europeans, despite their claims to civilization and superiority, are depicted as deceitful, cruel, and dishonorable. This inversion of roles serves to critique the racial and social hierarchies of the time, suggesting that true nobility is a matter of character rather than race. Through Oroonoko's story, Ben also questions the legitimacy of hereditary nobility. Oroonoko's nobility is portrayed as intrinsic, based on his personal qualities rather than his birth alone. This challenges the contemporary European notion that nobility and virtue are inherently linked to social class and race, proposing instead a more egalitarian view of human worth. Question 5. Explore the significance of Oroonoko's rebellion and its outcome in the context of the novel's themes. Answer. Oroonoko's rebellion is a significant event in the novel, encapsulating its major themes of freedom, resistance, and the quest for dignity. The rebellion represents Oroonoko's ultimate assertion of his autonomy and his refusal to accept the dehumanizing conditions of slavery. His leadership and courage in organizing the revolt underscore his qualities as a natural leader and a tragic hero. The outcome of the rebellion, its failure and Oroonoko's subsequent execution, highlights the tragic nature of his struggle. Despite his noble efforts and the righteousness of his cause, Oroonoko is unable to overcome the overwhelming power of the colonial system. This outcome emphasizes the novel's critique of the brutal and inescapable nature of the institution of slavery. It also underscores the futility of resistance in the face of such entrenched and pervasive oppression. Oroonoko's execution, portrayed with a sense of martyrdom, serves to further elevate his character and underscore the moral corruption of the colonizers. His death is not just a personal tragedy but a powerful indictment of the inhumanity and injustice of slavery. Through this outcome, Ben reinforces the themes of honor and sacrifice, showing that while Oroonoko's rebellion may have failed in practical terms, it succeeds in demonstrating the indomitable spirit and inherent dignity of the enslaved. In the broader context of the novel, the rebellion and its tragic end also serve as a call to the reader's conscience, urging them to recognize the moral failings of the society that allows such injustices to occur. It challenges the reader to question the legitimacy of the colonial and slave systems and to empathize with those who suffer under them. Critical tough questions with answers. ChatGPT. Certainly, here are some more complex and critical questions with in-depth answers related to Oroonoko. Question 1. How does Oroonoko navigate the tension between colonial propaganda and anti-colonial critique? Answer. Oroonoko navigates the tension between colonial propaganda and anti-colonial critique through its complex narrative and multifaceted portrayal of colonialism. On one hand, the novel can be seen as participating in colonial discourse by exoticizing its setting and depicting the African prince Oroonoko within a framework that appeals to European sensibilities. The descriptions of the lush, untamed landscape of Suriname and the noble savage trope applied to Oroonoko and the indigenous peoples align with colonial narratives that romanticize and otherize non-European cultures. However, Ben also subverts these colonial tropes to critique the very system that produces them. The detailed and sympathetic portrayal of Oroonoko's nobility and tragic fate serves as a powerful indictment of the inhumanity and moral corruption inherent in the institution of slavery and colonial exploitation. Ben exposes the hypocrisy and brutality of the colonizers, who betray Oroonoko despite their professed values of honor and civilization. The narrator's perspective further complicates the tension. By claiming first-hand experience and expressing personal admiration for Oroonoko, the narrator lends credibility to the anti-colonial critique while still operating within the limitations of her time. This duality allows Ben to subtly question and undermine colonial ideologies from within, presenting a nuanced and layered narrative that engages with both colonial propaganda and its critique. Question 2. Analyze the role of gender in Oroonoko, particularly in the context of power dynamics and resistance. Answer. Gender plays a crucial role in Oroonoko, particularly in how power dynamics and resistance are portrayed through the characters of Oroonoko and Amoinda. The novel explores the intersection of gender, race, and power, highlighting how these dynamics shape the characters' experiences and actions. Amoinda, as a female character, embodies both vulnerability and strength. Her beauty and desirability make her a target of male power and control, first in her homeland and then in the context of slavery. Despite these challenges, Amoinda displays resilience and agency, particularly in her unwavering loyalty to Oroonoko and her participation in their ultimate act of resistance. Her tragic fate, decided by Oroonoko as a means to protect her from further indignity, underscores the extreme measures taken by enslaved individuals to reclaim their autonomy. Oroonoko's masculinity is central to his identity and resistance. His heroic qualities, physical prowess, and leadership are all markers of his noble status. However, his enslavement challenges traditional notions of male power and honor, as he is subjected to the same dehumanizing treatment as other slaves. Oroonoko's rebellion and refusal to live in bondage are deeply tied to his sense of masculinity and honor, highlighting the intersection of gender and power in his struggle against oppression. The power dynamics between the European colonizers and the enslaved also have a gendered dimension. The colonizers' control over both Oroonoko and Amoinda reflects broader patriarchal and racial hierarchies. The novel critiques these dynamics by showcasing the moral and ethical failings of the colonizers, who, despite their power, are depicted as fundamentally dishonorable compared to the enslaved protagonists. Question 3. In what ways does Oroonoko reflect the contradictions of Enlightenment thinking regarding race and human rights? Answer. Oroonoko reflects the contradictions of Enlightenment thinking regarding race and human rights by simultaneously promoting ideals of nobility, honor, and rationality while grappling with the harsh realities of slavery and colonialism. The Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason, individual rights, and the inherent dignity of all humans, stands in stark contrast to the brutal practices of the slave trade and colonial exploitation depicted in the novel. Oroonoko, as a character, embodies many Enlightenment ideals. He is portrayed as rational, honorable, and capable of deep emotional and intellectual engagement. These traits challenge contemporary European views of Africans as inferior and incapable of such qualities. Ben's portrayal of Oroonoko suggests a common humanity that transcends race, aligning with Enlightenment principles of universal human rights and dignity. However, the novel also exposes the contradictions inherent in these ideals when juxtaposed with the reality of slavery. The same Enlightenment society that espouses liberty and equality engages in the systematic dehumanization and exploitation of Africans. The colonizers, who should theoretically uphold Enlightenment values, are depicted as morally corrupt and hypocritical. This dissonance highlights the failure of Enlightenment thinking to fully address and resolve the issues of racial inequality and injustice. Ben's narrative thus serves as a critique of the limitations and hypocrisies of Enlightenment ideals. By presenting a noble African prince who is ultimately destroyed by the very forces that claim to be civilized and rational, Oroonoko underscores the need for a more genuine and inclusive application of Enlightenment principles that truly recognizes and respects the humanity of all individuals, regardless of race. Question 4. How does Ben's depiction of Suriname function as a critique of European society and its values? Answer. Ben's depiction of Suriname functions as a critique of European society and its values by contrasting the supposed civility and moral superiority of Europeans with their actual behavior in the colonies. The exotic setting of Suriname, with its lush landscapes and indigenous peoples, provides a backdrop against which the actions of the European colonizers are starkly highlighted. In Suriname, the European colonizers are shown to be greedy, deceitful, and brutal. Their treatment of Oroonoko and the other slaves reveals a deep moral corruption that contradicts the values of honor, integrity, and civilization they claim to uphold. The betrayal of Oroonoko, who was repeatedly deceived and ultimately executed, serves as a powerful indictment of the colonizers' hypocrisy and cruelty. The indigenous people of Suriname are depicted with a certain degree of romanticism, living in harmony with nature and displaying a form of nobility and simplicity that contrasts with the Europeans' moral depravity. This portrayal critiques the European tendency to view non-European cultures as inferior and primitive. Instead, Ben suggests that true nobility and virtue may be found outside the boundaries of European society. Furthermore, the natural beauty and untamed wilderness of Suriname symbolize the freedom and authenticity that European society, with its rigid hierarchies and exploitative practices, lacks. The setting thus becomes a space where the failings of European values and the brutality of colonialism are laid bare, challenging the reader to reconsider the true nature of civilization and morality. Question 5. discuss the narrative structure of Oroonoko and its impact on the delivery of its themes. Answer. The narrative structure of Oroonoko is pivotal in the delivery of its themes, combining elements of biography, travel narrative, and novel. The story is framed as a first-person account by a narrator who claims to have witnessed the events firsthand. This structure lends authenticity and immediacy to the narrative, making the themes of honor, betrayal, and colonial critique more impactful. The chronological unfolding of Oroonoko's life, from his noble beginnings in Africa, through his betrayal and enslavement, to his tragic death, allows Ben to explore the transformation of a noble hero into a tragic figure. The structure emphasizes the stark contrasts between Oroonoko's inherent nobility and the degrading circumstances imposed upon him by the colonizers. The episodic nature of the narrative, with detailed descriptions of various events and settings, serves to highlight different aspects of colonial life and its injustices. For instance, the depiction of Oroonoko's capture and the treacherous journey to Suriname underscores the brutality of the slave trade. His experiences in the colony, including his relationships with both the colonizers and fellow slaves, further develop the themes of betrayal and resistance. Ben's use of a narrator who is both a participant and an observer allows for a dual perspective that enhances the thematic complexity of the novel. The narrator's sympathy for Oroonoko and critique of the colonizers' actions encourage the reader to question the morality of slavery and colonialism. At the same time, the narrator's occasional complicity in the colonial system reflects the ambivalence and contradictions inherent in the society Ben depicts. Overall, the narrative structure of Oroonoko is instrumental in conveying its themes, providing a multi-faceted and immersive exploration of honor, betrayal, and the moral failings of colonialism. Unique questions with answers. ChatGPT. Certainly, here are some unique questions along with their answers related to Oroonoko. Question 1. How does Afra-Ben use language and imagery in Oroonoko to subvert colonial narratives? Answer. Afra-Ben uses language and imagery in Oroonoko to subvert colonial narratives by challenging traditional stereotypes and presenting a nuanced view of race and power. One way she does this is through the use of descriptive language that humanizes Oroonoko and the indigenous people of Suriname. Rather than portraying them as savages or exotic others, Ben describes them in terms that evoke sympathy and admiration, emphasizing their humanity and dignity. For example, Ben describes Oroonoko as having a noble grace and a majesty in his countenance that defy the typical portrayal of Africans as inferior or uncivilized. Similarly, her descriptions of the indigenous people emphasize their connection to the land and their harmonious relationship with nature, challenging the European perception of them as primitive or backward. Ben also uses imagery to critique colonial power dynamics. The use of the term plantation to describe the colony, for example, evokes the image of a cultivated garden, suggesting order and control. However, Ben contrasts this with the reality of the colony, which is marked by violence, exploitation, and moral decay. This juxtaposition serves to undermine the idea of European superiority and exposes the brutality of colonialism. Overall, Ben's use of language and imagery in Oroonoko serves to challenge and subvert colonial narratives, presenting a more complex and humanizing portrayal of non-European cultures and critiquing the injustices of colonial rule. Question 2. How does Ben use the character of Amoinda to explore themes of agency and resistance in Oroonoko? Answer. In Oroonoko, Amoinda's character serves as a vehicle for exploring themes of agency and resistance, particularly in the context of slavery and patriarchal society. Despite being initially presented as a victim of colonial exploitation, Amoinda demonstrates agency through her actions and choices throughout the novel. One way Amoinda asserts her agency is through her relationship with Oroonoko. Despite their circumstances, Amoinda and Oroonoko's love is portrayed as a source of strength and defiance against the dehumanizing effects of slavery. Amoinda's decision to remain faithful to Oroonoko, even in the face of betrayal and separation, is an act of resistance against the forces that seek to dehumanize her. Amoinda also demonstrates agency through her willingness to take control of her own fate. When faced with the prospect of being used as a pawn in the colonizers' schemes, Amoinda chooses to take her own life rather than submit to further degradation. This act of self-determination, while tragic, is a powerful assertion of her autonomy and agency in a society that seeks to strip her of both. Through Amoinda's character, Ben challenges the notion of passive victimhood often associated with enslaved women. Amoinda's agency and resistance serve as a reminder of the resilience and strength of those who are oppressed, highlighting the complexities of power and agency in the context of slavery and colonialism. Question 3. How does Ben use the character of the narrator in Oroonoko to comment on the role of storytelling and perspective in shaping historical narratives? Answer. In Oroonoko, Ben uses the character of the narrator to comment on the role of storytelling and perspective in shaping historical narratives. The narrator, who is presented as a witness to the events of the novel, plays a crucial role in shaping the reader's understanding of the story and its characters. One way the narrator influences the narrative is through their perspective on Oroonoko and the other characters. The narrator's admiration for Oroonoko and their sympathy for his plight serve to humanize him and challenge the colonial stereotypes that would portray him as a savage or a brute. By presenting Oroonoko as a complex and noble character, the narrator subverts the dominant colonial narrative that seeks to dehumanize non-European peoples. The narrator also comments on the nature of storytelling itself and its role in shaping historical narratives. Throughout the novel, the narrator reflects on the challenges of recounting past events accurately and acknowledges the limitations of their own perspective. This meta-narrative element encourages the reader to question the reliability of historical accounts and consider how different perspectives can shape our understanding of the past. Overall, Ben uses the character of the narrator in Oroonoko to highlight the subjective nature of storytelling and the importance of considering multiple perspectives when interpreting historical events. Through the narrator's voice, Ben encourages the reader to engage critically with the text and consider how their own perspective influences their understanding of history. Question 4. How does Ben use the character of Oroonoko to challenge traditional notions of heroism and masculinity? Answer. In Oroonoko, Ben uses the character of Oroonoko to challenge traditional notions of heroism and masculinity by presenting a complex and multifaceted portrayal of the protagonist. Oroonoko is not simply a one-dimensional hero but a character who grapples with the complexities of his circumstances and his own moral code. One way Ben challenges traditional notions of heroism is by depicting Oroonoko as a character who is deeply emotional and introspective. Oroonoko is not afraid to express his feelings or to show vulnerability, traits that are often seen as incompatible with traditional ideas of masculinity. By portraying Oroonoko as a character who is both strong and sensitive, Ben challenges the stereotype of the stoic, unemotional hero. Ben also challenges traditional notions of heroism by depicting Oroonoko as a character who is ultimately powerless in the face of colonial oppression. Despite his noble qualities and his efforts to resist his enslavement, Oroonoko is ultimately defeated by the overwhelming forces of colonialism. This tragic outcome undermines the traditional narrative of the heroic figure who triumphs against all odds, instead highlighting the injustices and complexities of the colonial system. Overall, Ben's portrayal of Oroonoko challenges traditional notions of heroism and masculinity by presenting a character who is complex, flawed, and ultimately unable to overcome the forces of oppression arrayed against him. In doing so, Ben creates a more nuanced and realistic portrayal of heroism that acknowledges the complexities of human experience and the limitations of individual agency in the face of larger social forces. Question 5. How does Ben use irony in Oroonoko to critique the moral hypocrisy of the colonizers? Answer. Ben uses irony in Oroonoko to critique the moral hypocrisy of the colonizers by highlighting the stark contrast between their professed values and their actual behavior. One example of irony in the novel is the portrayal of the colonizers as civilized and enlightened, despite their participation in the brutal institution of slavery. Throughout the novel, the colonizers justify their actions by appealing to notions of honor, civilization, and Christian morality. However, Ben uses irony to expose the hollowness of these claims. The colonizers' treatment of Oroonoko, whom they betray and sell into slavery, exposes the moral bankruptcy of their professed values. Ben's use of irony in these instances serves to underscore the hypocrisy of the colonizers and to critique the broader systems of power and exploitation that they represent. Another example of irony in the novel is the portrayal of Oroonoko himself. Despite his noble qualities and his efforts to resist his enslavement, Oroonoko is ultimately defeated by the colonizers. This outcome is ironic in that it highlights the injustices of the colonial system, which allows for the exploitation and oppression of individuals like Oroonoko who embody values that the colonizers claim to uphold. Overall, Ben's use of irony in Oroonoko serves to critique the moral hypocrisy of the colonizers and to highlight the complexities of power, morality, and identity in the context of colonialism. Through irony, Ben exposes the contradictions and injustices of the colonial system, challenging the reader to question the dominant narratives of power and oppression. Related to criticism and theories. ChatGPT. Certainly, here are some questions related to criticism and theories in the context of Oroonoko. Question 1. How can post-colonial theory be applied to analyze Oroonoko and its portrayal of colonialism? Answer. Post-colonial theory can be applied to analyze Oroonoko by examining the novel's portrayal of colonialism and its impact on the characters and societies depicted. One aspect of post-colonial theory that can be applied to the novel is the concept of colonial discourse, which refers to the ways in which colonial powers justified and perpetuated their dominance over colonized peoples. In Oroonoko, Ben critiques colonial discourse by exposing the moral and ethical failings of the colonizers and by presenting Oroonoko as a noble and dignified character who resists colonial oppression. Another aspect of post-colonial theory that can be applied to the novel is the concept of hybridity, which refers to the mixing of different cultures and identities that occurs as a result of colonial encounters. Oroonoko depicts the complex interactions between European colonizers, African slaves, and indigenous peoples, highlighting the ways in which these different groups interact and influence each other. By examining these interactions, a post-colonial analysis can reveal the ways in which colonialism shapes identity and culture. Overall, a post-colonial analysis of Oroonoko can reveal the ways in which the novel engages with and critiques the colonial project, as well as the ways in which it reflects the broader cultural and historical context of its time. Question 2. How does feminist theory illuminate the portrayal of gender in Oroonoko? Answer. Feminist theory can illuminate the portrayal of gender in Oroonoko by examining the ways in which female characters are represented and the power dynamics that shape their experiences. One aspect of feminist theory that can be applied to the novel is the concept of patriarchy, which refers to the social system in which men hold primary power and dominate in roles of political leadership, moral authority, and social privilege. In Oroonoko, patriarchy is evident in the ways in which female characters, such as Amoinda, are subjected to the authority and control of male characters. Feminist theory can also be used to analyze the ways in which female characters resist patriarchal oppression. Amoinda, for example, demonstrates agency and resilience in the face of her enslavement, asserting her autonomy through her actions and choices. By examining these moments of resistance, feminist theory can reveal the ways in which gender intersects with other forms of oppression, such as race and class, in shaping the experiences of female characters in the novel. Overall, a feminist analysis of Oroonoko can illuminate the ways in which gender shapes power dynamics and relationships in the novel, as well as the ways in which female characters navigate and resist patriarchal oppression. Question 3. How does psychoanalytic theory offer insight into the characters' motivations and behaviors in Oroonoko? Answer. Psychoanalytic theory can offer insight into the characters' motivations and behaviors in Oroonoko by examining the unconscious desires and conflicts that drive their actions. One aspect of psychoanalytic theory that can be applied to the novel is the concept of the Oedipus complex, which refers to a child's unconscious sexual desire for the parent of the opposite sex and jealousy and rivalry with the parent of the same sex. In Oroonoko, the relationships between characters such as Oroonoko, Amoinda, and the colonial authorities can be analyzed through the lens of the Oedipus complex to reveal underlying motivations and conflicts. Psychoanalytic theory can also be used to analyze the ways in which characters' behaviors are shaped by their unconscious desires and fears. For example, Oroonoko's rebellion against the colonial authorities can be seen as a manifestation of his unconscious desire for freedom and autonomy, as well as his fear of being controlled and dominated by others. By examining these unconscious motivations, psychoanalytic theory can offer insight into the complex psychology of the characters in the novel. Overall, a psychoanalytic analysis of Oroonoko can reveal the ways in which unconscious desires and conflicts drive the characters' actions and shape their relationships, offering a deeper understanding of their motivations and behaviors. Question 4. How does Marxist theory illuminate the economic and social relations depicted in Oroonoko? Answer. Marxist theory can illuminate the economic and social relations depicted in Oroonoko by examining the ways in which class and economic factors shape the characters' experiences and interactions. One aspect of Marxist theory that can be applied to the novel is the concept of class struggle, which refers to the conflict between different social classes over the distribution of wealth, power, and resources. In Oroonoko, class struggle is evident in the relationships between the European colonizers and the enslaved Africans, as well as between different groups within the colony. Marxist theory can also be used to analyze the ways in which economic factors influence the characters' behaviors and motivations. For example, Oroonoko's rebellion against the colonial authorities can be seen as a response to his economic exploitation and his desire for economic autonomy. By examining these economic factors, Marxist theory can offer insight into the material conditions that shape the characters' lives and actions. Overall, a Marxist analysis of Oroonoko can reveal the ways in which class and more. ChatGPT. Certainly, here are additional questions related to criticism and theories in the context of Oroonoko. Question 1. How does psychoanalytic theory, particularly the concept of the other, help understand the dynamics between Oroonoko and the European colonizers? Answer. Psychoanalytic theory, with its focus on the concept of the other, can help understand the dynamics between Oroonoko and the European colonizers by examining the ways in which each group perceives and relates to the other. The concept of the other refers to the process by which individuals or groups define themselves in relation to those they perceive as different or alien. In Oroonoko, the European colonizers view Oroonoko and the indigenous people of Suriname as the other, depicting them as exotic, primitive, and inferior. This perception of the other serves to justify the colonizers' domination and exploitation of these groups, as they are seen as less civilized and deserving of the same rights and freedoms as Europeans. On the other hand, Oroonoko and the indigenous people also view the Europeans as the other, but in a different light. They see the Europeans as powerful and oppressive, representing a threat to their way of life and their freedom. This perception of the other motivates Oroonoko's rebellion and resistance against the colonizers, as he seeks to assert his own identity and autonomy in the face of European domination. Overall, a psychoanalytic analysis of the dynamics between Oroonoko and the European colonizers can reveal the ways in which perceptions of the other shape power dynamics and relationships in the novel, highlighting the complexities of identity, power, and domination in the colonial context. Question 2. How does eco-criticism offer insights into the representation of nature and the environment in Oroonoko? Answer. Eco-criticism, with its focus on the relationship between literature and the natural environment, can offer insights into the representation of nature and the environment in Oroonoko by examining the ways in which these elements are depicted and their significance to the narrative. One aspect of eco-criticism that can be applied to the novel is the concept of nature writing, which refers to literature that portrays the natural world in a way that highlights its beauty, complexity, and intrinsic value. In Oroonoko, nature plays a significant role in the narrative, serving as both a backdrop for the action and a reflection of the characters' inner states. The lush landscapes of Suriname, with their exotic flora and fauna, are described in vivid detail, creating a sense of the richness and diversity of the natural world. This depiction of nature serves to contrast with the brutality and inhumanity of the colonial system, highlighting the ways in which nature provides a source of solace and beauty in the face of oppression. Furthermore, the portrayal of nature in Oroonoko can be seen as symbolic of the characters' own experiences and struggles. For example, the river that Oroonoko and Amoinda are thrown into at the end of the novel can be interpreted as a symbol of their purification and transcendence, as they are reunited in death and freed from the confines of the material world. Overall, an eco-critical analysis of Oroonoko can reveal the ways in which nature is represented and its significance to the narrative, highlighting the novel's engagement with environmental themes and its portrayal of the natural world as a site of beauty, power, and meaning. Question 3. How does queer theory offer insights into the depiction of sexuality and desire in Oroonoko? Answer. Queer theory, with its focus on challenging normative assumptions about gender and sexuality, can offer insights into the depiction of sexuality and desire in Oroonoko by examining the ways in which these themes are represented and their significance to the narrative. One aspect of queer theory that can be applied to the novel is the concept of queer desire, which refers to desire that falls outside the traditional norms of heterosexuality. In Oroonoko, the relationship between Oroonoko and Amoinda can be seen as a form of queer desire, as it challenges traditional assumptions about gender and sexuality. Oroonoko's love for Amoinda transcends social and cultural boundaries, defying the expectations of the colonial society in which they live. This depiction of queer desire serves to highlight the fluidity and complexity of human relationships, as well as the ways in which love and desire can resist categorization and definition. Furthermore, the novel's portrayal of Oroonoko's relationship with the European colonizers can also be seen through a queer lens. Oroonoko's status as a noble prince who is ultimately betrayed and enslaved by the colonizers can be interpreted as a metaphor for the ways in which queer individuals are marginalized and oppressed by dominant society. Overall, a queer theoretical analysis of Oroonoko can reveal the ways in which the novel challenges normative assumptions about gender and sexuality, highlighting the complexities of desire and identity in the colonial context. Question 4. How does cultural criticism provide insights into the representation of race and ethnicity in Oroonoko? Answer. Cultural criticism, with its focus on the ways in which cultural practices and representations shape identity and power dynamics, can provide insights into the representation of race and ethnicity in Oroonoko by examining the ways in which these themes are depicted and their significance to the narrative. One aspect of cultural criticism that can be applied to the novel is the concept of cultural othering, which refers to the process by which dominant cultures define themselves in opposition to perceived cultural others. In Oroonoko, cultural othering is evident in the ways in which the European colonizers portray Oroonoko and the indigenous people of Suriname as exotic, primitive, and inferior. This portrayal serves to justify the colonizers' domination and exploitation of these groups, as they are seen as less civilized and deserving of the same rights and freedoms as Europeans. By examining these representations of race and ethnicity, cultural criticism can reveal the ways in which colonial ideologies shape identity and power dynamics in the novel. Furthermore, cultural criticism can also provide insights into the ways in which Oroonoko and the indigenous people resist cultural othering and assert their own cultural identities. Oroonoko's refusal to accept his enslavement and his ultimate rebellion against the colonizers can be seen as acts of cultural resistance, as he seeks to assert his own identity and autonomy in the face of colonial oppression. Overall, a cultural critical analysis of Oroonoko can reveal the ways in which the novel engages with and critiques colonial ideologies of race and ethnicity, highlighting the complexities of identity and power in the colonial context.